Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Just give a few more minutes for more people to join, and then we'll get started. Morning, good afternoon, everyone. Just waiting for a few more people to join. In a few minutes, we'll get started. All right, I think we've got a good list of attendees. I think more people would be joining shortly, but let's get going then. So, hi, everyone. Let me just introduce today's host, Andy Doughty, who's our co-founder and also um, Chief Strategy Officer. And we also have today David Ross. He's a head of solution engineering. Both Andy and David are going to take a very exciting topic, which is composable test automation and how Virtuoso plays into the whole composable game. So I'll hand it over to now Andy and David, and I'll be mute. So over to you, Andy.
Thank you, Vinay. Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for joining. Welcome to Virtuoso 101 for January. We're going to tackle the topic of composable testing at scale. So Virtuoso has a unique solution which enables teams to reuse their testing assets at scale across common platforms. So we'd like to take you through that. So David and I, over the next 30-40 minutes, are going to give you an introduction to our company and our products, our platform Virtuoso, but also explain what composable is and how it works. So let me just go to full screen here. Okay, so the objective of this session is to be a really a practical walkthrough and a technical demonstration. So I've got a couple of slides which I'd like to sort of use to sort of introduce a session. But I'll step through these at some pace so that we can spend a bit more time on the platform. But what we'd like to cover today is firstly, for those of you who aren't familiar with Virtuoso or are new to our product, I'd like to do a short introduction. I know many of you, as your essentially partners of Virtuoso, will know us, so I'll keep that brief, and then we can step into the topic area here, which is composable testing. So we see composable as being a real enabler and a way to revolutionize how you can reuse testing at some scale. Our vision for composable testing is, jointly with our partners, is to build composable end-to-end testing assets that are fully reusable across all instances and deployments of common systems and platforms. So essentially, we create with our partners a library of assets that can be used globally to ensure that testing organizations, quality engineering departments can come to the marketplace with proactive solutions, reusable assets, and things that you can help accelerate the delivery of your services at that scale. So we're going to talk about what is composable. We're going to be taking you through examples of that. We're going to show you what is unique within Virtuoso that lends itself to this solution. We're going to talk about some of the key components of why this works in Virtuoso, whereas in previous times, maybe the I guess the efforts to create accelerators at some scale has failed. So what's different now, both with the marketplace, with software in general, but also our solution. And we talk through some real world use cases as well, and some examples of where we have this sort of in operation today. So to continue now with an intro to Virtuoso, and in the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about our journey as an organization. But essentially, Virtuoso is a SaaS platform. We're an AI-powered end-to-end functional testing product that focuses on browser-based applications. We recognize that within your landscapes across your portfolio of customers, that your scope extends beyond that, and that is something that we're addressing in our roadmap actively now in 2025 to ensure that we support your desktop and native mobile needs as well. But we're a platform that's focused on that end-to-end functional testing. And our aim is to, through the use of newer technologies and branches of AI, is to really speed up testing by 10x and deliver high value. And our mission from day one has been to create and bring to market the #1 autonomous QA platform in this space. And we can talk a little bit about how we're achieving that, and how, as we develop our products, we're bringing more autonomous aspects into this. There's a few of our clients examples there, the majority of which we have been through competitive evaluations, testing Virtuoso amongst the other market competition against use cases, and we're selected based on our capabilities, but also our sort of real world and tangible deployment of AI. So quick view of our story to date, really, and the journey we've been on, and we continue to move forwards with. So we established this company in 2017. We had a bold vision. I think we, at the time of coming into the market, the default option to create functional test automation were really in-house built frameworks, and that kind of programmatic scripted nature of creating tests, which was incredibly high maintenance at times. But also there were record and play products in the market, some model-based products. So we had a vision to approach this from a different angle, to use natural language, and this is one of the key tech breakthroughs that we made in the early days, was to bring in that expressive natural language method of creating the tests, coupled with intelligent self-healing to tackle that burden of maintenance when you started to build automation at scale. And our goal, essentially, when we first came to market with the GA version, was to create the fastest product in the market for creating tests. Most of the time, in the whole cycle of the software testing life cycle, most time is generally spent on creating and maintaining tests. So they're the areas where we wanted to bring in real speed gains and have that fastest product on the market. And we had an initial early adopter program. We measured some fantastic metrics through that, and that was pivotal in I guess telling us from an evidentiary purpose that we were on track with having that kind of speed inside of our platform. We went on then in 2020, 2021 to really refine that more for the enterprise use cases with the addition of live authoring, which you'll see some of that today. And also, one of the things about our organization, it's still true today, is we're very much an engineering-led and technical products organization. We have got I guess quite a light sales and marketing department. So we recognized early on that through great customer experience, we'd be able to really support and grow our existing client base, and through our partner enablement, where we've really heavily invested and working with partners, that was going to give us the opportunity to scale things by getting routes to market that we wouldn't ordinarily get. As I say, we're we're majority engineers in our organization and focus on our development of platform rather than the marketing side. And in terms of where we're going with things, we came to market with a platform built from the ground up on natural language, bots that are performing a lot of those tasks, and machine learning and supporting aspects of self-healing and other things in our platform. But as we shift that now to more intelligent and autonomous processes within the SDLC through agentive and agentic technologies, then it's really exciting where we're taking the product. So this brings me on to composable. So here's a definition, and some people may be aware of this because composable commerce, composable is, I guess, it's known and it's successful in other spheres of technology and application estates, but really it's that modular approach to building and integrating systems. It's about reusability. It's about ease of composing, creating, I guess, adjusting, amending, configuring, etc. It's about giving those building blocks that really sort of helps emphasize an approach to that flexibility and scalability. And what that means for us and how we've adopted this is, in terms of Virtuoso Composable, we build, again, with our partners, we build solutions here around Composable where we enable you to create these modular tests, so to compose tests and end-to-end journeys for those common enterprise platforms from pre-built and reusable components. So you see an example there on the right-hand side. This is high level, but this is a policy and claims journey for an insurer, and that sort of as an illustrative purposes kind of gives you a feel of the kind of building blocks and modular approach you can take. And I think what this really, the value here is how we can enable our partners to build once and reuse at scale. And when we say reuse, we're talking about building modular composable journeys and test assets for common systems that work on any instance across any environment and different deployments of that same technology. Second to that, it enables our partners then to deliver that consistent quality, deliver quick wins. And I think, in a time when agility is increasing and customer expectations, they expect value earlier or faster, eliminating those efforts, those duplication efforts, reducing significantly the maintenance costs, helps to accelerate project delivery timelines and helps our customers receive from our partners that value quicker and earlier and more consistently. So that was a little bit about what composable is within Virtuoso. In terms of, just to cover why I think this hasn't worked previously in the past, and because I'm going to go on to talk a bit about the foundations to this in our products and why it works. I think the concept or market opportunity to create test accelerators that can be reused at scale, that market opportunity has been I guess identified many years ago, but I think there's inherent limitations in the solutions used to try and create those accelerators or trying to create that solution that has led to it failing to have that impact in the real world. I think some of the reasons why are that, previously when I've been involved in different consultancies and looked at how they've approached this real world problem, the assets they're creating, the solution they're using is just too opaque, it's too complex. It can only be understood and really sort of developed or managed by very specific skills within teams, and it isn't open to wider software delivery lifecycle teams. Also, the test assets that are created, they were always limited and restricted to sort of versions of software or the environments, or they were built using sort of object repositories or deterministic selectors, all of which meant that scaling this was difficult. So they weren't able to truly build something lift and shift. And then also, if you did try and build a good coverage with a test accelerator in the past, generally the overhead to manage it with dynamically changing software was difficult. And I think the last thing I'd add here is the timing. In this era of SaaS, the timing is perfect for this because as software vendors and enterprise business system vendors now are bringing products to market, the release cadence is high, so it's frequent release, frequent change. The systems are easy to configure, but generally, a lot of customers now are taking on systems and trying to keep closer to that standard of the system rather than sort of the old days of on-premise and heavy customization. So, for SaaS solutions, it's a perfect fit. So four components, and these essentially what combine to make this a unique solution for Virtuoso. So there's four aspects to this, and Dave is going to show you these in this sort of demo example. So I'll just cover them very quickly. One is the natural language programming foundation of Virtuoso, where the assets are human readable, business readable, which means that when you're building a scaled out suite of test assets, understanding what the tests are doing, what you're asserting, the data you're using, what you're covering, what you need to then maybe adjust or update to match a specific configuration. It just makes it an easy to work with library of assets that everybody understands. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, and this is probably the most crucial, is the intelligent element identification. Virtuoso does not work with the deterministic or non-deterministic selectors for IDs, and we're not tied to object repositories and such. We've got an intelligent method using descriptive hints, and we'll show that as an example shortly. Coupled with that intuitive self-healing means that with so much reusability, we can't afford dynamic changes inside the applications to really make the tests, quickly out of date or even obsolete. So having that intelligence to understand those changes and to adapt to that and heal the tests automatically is a huge advantage. And then the final point is really about the extensibility. The common platforms we're talking about are ERP systems, their line of business systems and CRMs, which are very data centric, and to persist data as you're testing an entire ERP is a significant task. So the working with the API based nature of Virtuoso and how you can sort of take that library of assets and feed the data through and persist it and orchestrate things correctly, that extensibility lends itself to that. So where this works, so really, I won't spend much time on this, but just to give you a framing of what are the sort of key target candidates and also the characteristics we look for. Typically we're talking about the common platforms, the ERPs, the line of business type of systems that really are commonly used across industries. And the characteristics are, those SaaS solutions where the core will remain fairly consistent. They can be, of course, configurable, and we have a fantastic solution of how you manage that. And those where there's frequent releases and there's that critical need for ongoing testing. And the benefits, I think, are twofold. If we look at in the context of working in partnership with our partners, is that we enable through this proactive, pre-built and reusable library to deliver faster and earlier with leaner teams. The scale is there, that lift and shift nature, which lends itself to delivering earlier, happier customers, and of course, increased margins for your business. And then for our customers, for your customers, it's about them seeing value from the partner really early. So early test, early verification, quick wins, but also being able to take those pre-built composable tests and use them potentially for their acceptance testing, their UAT phases, and also the operational assurance ongoing. So it has extended value to the end customer. And then just before I hand over to David to take you through this solution and the platform, a couple of examples of the real world benefits and some metrics here. And they're quite different. So the first one is an electronic patient record system, a global product created by Daedalus, one of our customers who have a suite of products for this industry, for the healthcare sector. And it's a vastly functionally rich application, really complex, and they struggle to automate this with more traditional solutions, but Virtuoso was a perfect fit. They built 6,000 journeys in reusable componentized fashion, so composable for Lorenzo. But as they rebuilt that application in newer technologies and took that to market, they're able to reuse a significant amount of those journeys that they have to manage their existing platform to then test their new ones. Some of the metrics there, we enabled them to go from an effort level of 475 man days for a major release down to under 5 through the automation they created. And as a company, Virtuoso is a lever for them to save over £6 million in savings in IT costs, not through people or headcount reduction, but through just greater efficiencies in their development processes through the automated testing they have in place. So it's a significant savings they're expecting to see through our partnership. And then to finish off on Coins, this is an ERP system for the global sector of construction house building, engineering and ops. And they have customers all over the world. It's from the Axis Group, which is a £9 billion UK software vendor. So with Coins, there are now over 1,000 pre-built journeys covering that module ERP system. There's well over 6,000 plus checkpoints that supports those 1,000 pre-built journeys. And they now offer Virtuoso as a pre-built, ready to run regression pack for every customer taking a release. So that's created in partnership is a market opportunity of 12 million revenue for Coins of upselling them on a test solution, which in turn saves the customer hundreds of man days of effort every year in sort of complex regression testing that they were having to carry out. So two different examples with different kind of metrics and business drivers, but both sort of built on the composable nature of our platform. So what I'll do is we'll take questions a little bit later. So you get any questions on these kind of examples or others, happy to answer those. I'll hand over to David, and David can take you through the software.
Thanks, Andy. Right, let me just share my screen.
And David,
Okay.
while you're covering the demo, there is one question on how we can advise how self-healing mechanism prevents the false negatives and false positives. So if it's something that you can cover in your demo, that would also be great. Just a question from one of our participants.
Yeah, sure. So jumping in, I'm going to start off with the coin setup, as Andy mentioned. So the first view we've got here is directly within the Access Group's testing environment. So I just wanted to show you the scale of the coverage we have with this. So as Andy said, we've got over 1,000 journeys now. And you can see here that broken down by module within Coin's ERP. And as Andy said, it's truly global as well. So we have varying regions. So this is a full extensive suite of tests that Coins are obviously using to do their day-to-day testing. What that then looks like in a test, so if I just actually turn in, so we can start to see how these are then structured. So the key parts within here are the checkpoints, and these are reusable. So as you can see here, like for instance, this one here that's responsible for data setup is actually used in 76 other instances. So that means that even really complex functionality can be put into a checkpoint and reused. So from a reusability perspective and that kind of composable part, you either have full end-to-end journeys that you can reuse. So where you've got common workflows across an application, you can reuse the entire journey. But it may also be that you've just got common chunks of functionality that you want to build up and then just bring in at certain points as you start to build these out. So that's kind of where like the two sweet spots are with this. It's either full end-to-end flows or building those modular bits to build up an entire flow. And I'll show you the more modular approach a bit later on Dynamics. One of the key parts for the modular and composable aspect of this is data in any kind of end-to-end process flow testing. So what we've done here with Coins is rather than having to have standalone data tables that are obviously a bit clunky to move around, and as you move across different sort of variations of the instances of the software, we've actually built, using the API element of Virtuoso, some smart data setup. So basically what this does, it's a couple of things within here, is it's an authentication token, so it's handling the login and setting the user up. So where you've got varying role permissions that need to happen, it's controlling that part, but it's also getting the test data to run this test. So it's creating a sort of standalone data source. And the way it's doing this is calling endpoints within the coins application to then get the data to set up. So you can see here, all of that data setup's all managed as part of the execution. So there's no need to say have standalone data tables. So this makes it sort of shippable and makes it a lot easier lift and shift and deploy in other customer instances. What we've then done is once, obviously we've got all of those tests and you want to move these into another customer environment, is we import them in to the your client org. So we get them set up with the full library suite. Now, not all of these will be relevant, but we do put them in with the coins customers because there's a lot of flows in there that may not be relevant straight away, but as they become features, etc., they want to expand that testing. So we put the full suite in. And this just becomes like a full like repository for them. So they've got a library to go and look through. And because they're all kind of really descriptive at the journey level, it explains what the functionality is. It's really easy to understand whether those kind of journeys are relevant to the testing that they need to do. Once you actually start to run those, we'll have varying levels of success with operation that happens. You can see here, I've taken a copy from the library, I've put it into another instance of coins, and I've started to run them. So all the data is set up through that smart bit at the front that manages all the test data. But you can see here, we've got a couple that have failed. So if I just drill down into that and look at kind of what happened there, is some of the workflows that happen within coins, there's configuration differences and different business logic. So you can see here, I've taken a templated test, run it, and it's come down and it said that I've actually missed an input somewhere. So something within this version of coins has got a mandatory field that wasn't in the base set of tests that were imported. So that's a common kind of flow with most configurable applications. You find that the overall process flow through is kind of aligned with the standard version that comes out, and then occasionally you'll have additional, so maybe an additional screen that's put in. Some fields are mandatory for some businesses, some aren't. So they'll have some configurational differences around those, and that's kind of the differences that we see, that the core flow is the same, but there's some bits that need updating. So the way this kind of really works within Virtuoso is through the live authoring bit. So if I actually just drop in, we can update this test and I'll show you kind of how easy it is to do this as you go through. So if we just open up live authoring. And I'll just stop so that we can actually run through and add in some additional steps. So the way you would do this is when you have a test that fails, you start up your live authoring journey, and then you can actually run it down to the point where it failed. So you get to see kind of everything that's happening as it runs through. And I'll just let this run through so we can get down and add those steps in. So what I've done is put a point in, so I know, because on that screenshot, it was calling out that it needed something in this preference tab. So what I've done is I've just added a pause point so I can run the journey down to this point, and then we'll go and start to edit this test. So we can add in a new checkpoint. So I want to make some changes, add it in. So create a new checkpoint. So we'll put those separate steps within this. And then I need to go and click on the preference tab up here. So we'll just identify the bit that we want to work with here. And then you can see I've got an option to use the last picked item. So I'll just drop that in. And then we'll just step through just to make sure it works. We're on to the right part here. So the bit I needed to do was the default queue down here is actually a mandatory field of coins. So we'll just go in and add that step. And again, we'll just make sure that that one's working. So we can see that's updated. And then we just need back to the details screen. So again, just an additional step. Just make sure that one works. So we're all good there. Let's let that finish. What's loading up, and then we can just carry on running that test through. So basically, you can see where there are configurational changes. You just go in, run it down to the point where that change starts to happen. You can either add it to the existing library checkpoints if you wish to, or you can create a new checkpoint depending on kind of the separation that you need within that flow. And that's how you would then update those journeys. Vinay, just remind me again, what was the question around the self-healing?
Yeah, so the self-healing question was more on do we have mechanisms to prevent false negatives or false positives when the elements self-heal?
So I'm assuming that's just around, do we sort of interact with the wrong and the healing happens? Cool. So the way Virtuoso works, it has a probabilistic model in the background. And if I actually just drop into one of these steps, what you can see here is when we actually use the natural language to build out the element, we actually build out a full model of that element. So we understand all the attributes to it. We've got element structure, the selectors that were in there, and also a natural language hint. So basically, Virtuoso will look at the information, identify what it assumes to be the target element on the page, and then we'll apply a trust score to that. So there'll be varying stages to that. So you'll have what will be a really strong match, and we'll just update the selectors and we're good to go. We may do some healing and then put a warning against that and say that we've updated this element, but we've done it with a low confidence rating. So you may want to review this and just check that the interaction was correct. And if that change is too drastic, then we will just fail and you will then go and fix that. Across the board, the self-healing is very robust. We see some really great time savings in that. And I guess the way you kind of check for false positives is just like you would with any automation, is making sure that you have good assertions in place to check that your flow as it progresses through is meeting the right stages and the right screen layouts and checkpoints. Hopefully that covers the question, but let me know if not. So that's kind of from a coins perspective around how the composable works. And like I said, the coins version of it really was just around full end-to-end workflows. So typically what we see when this gets deployed across all of the access groups customers with coins is they are using those full end-to-end flows and just making minor changes, configuration changes, like we did just around small inputs, or maybe they've got some additional screens or the layouts change slightly. So like side menus and things have additional options in. But if you want to go to something, say like Dynamics, when I talked earlier about how you can build this very modular, so you can have bits of process that you then bolt together to build a full end-to-end journey. But that's kind of what we're going to do here. So what I've got is a full library of parts of the application, so functionality and things that we want to achieve. So you can see here, let me just start live authoring with this as well so we can actually see it in play. Let's wait for that to start one moment. But basically what we've got here, and I can just show these, is within a library, we have the bits of functionality that we want to bolt together to build that end-to-end workflow. Let's run this. So first of all, obviously we've gone to a landing page and we've presented with the login screen. So we'll just show that so you can see it. So we've got the landing screen there and we want to obviously log in. So we just come to the library, we find our login step, we can look into there to see what's actually in there. So we check it's the right one. And then you can then start to build these up really quickly. So if you think about where you've got common functionality within these applications, it may be that it's not, let's say, not a full end-to-end flow that you build. I mean, in things like Salesforce, there's the pop-up forms that you fill in. Regardless of the content in those, they're all structured in very much the same way. So you can build a library checkpoint that fills out those pop-up forms with data, and then you just make small configurations then depending on kind of how many input fields are there and things like that. So you can start to build this quite quickly. Run that from the beginning. Oh, might have a fire, yeah. So 1 second. Sorry, we seem to have. Sorry, bear with me just 1 second. Sorry, I was from the apologies for that, guys. Let's just check we're on the right page this time. That's better. Sorry about that, guys. So, as I said, if you bring in the checkpoints using the right page this time, so we can see those run through. So here we've got common steps of using the Authenticator app to log in, so the 2FA, and then we can see that just loading. So we've got our login part done, and then we can start to come down. So I'll just take a little while to load through into the actual application. Then we can start to say, actually, we know some next bits on here. So I'll just show you on the screen. When that loads up, there's a Copilot box that pops up on the side that we need to deal with. And then we can start doing checkpoints and start to deal with these. So you can see it loads up there. And then we know that we need to get rid of that. So you can start to build out the steps. You're just using the library checkpoint. So again, just add these in and let them run through. So we're just going to give you a bit of flavor what that looks like. So you can see quite quickly, we've got elements of the journey that we just build together and start to put, and then let that run through. So as I was saying before, this may be that you have full end-to-end flows, or it may be they're just core parts of the application that are very generic and reusable, so that you would have a whole raft of these that you can build, put together, and then as you start to script your journeys out, write your journeys out, you just add in the core bits that you need. Pause for a moment there. Have we got any more questions for now?
Not yet. I think the previous one was answered. So guys, feel free to raise questions as we go along, and you can just type it in the Q&A panel, and David or Andy or myself would provide a response to it. Go ahead, David.
Cool. So I'll just let this one play through just to give you an idea of like what an end-to-end flow would look like. Again, as you can see, this is really easy for anyone to then pick up. So where you've like built this, even if they're quite complicated ones. So where we looked at like the data setup previously, the creation of those kind of sits to one side, but then anyone can pick those up and really sort of gain pace of building out a whole raft of test coverage very, very quickly. And I think that's kind of where the key to this really lies. It's really easy for people to adopt and run with it at scale.
Just a comment on before Dave, you took us through the whole library of the coins ERP, composable journeys. I said, excuse me, over 1,000 journeys and obviously many thousand checkpoints. But just for reference, it was probably a time frame of 3 months for those to be all created, and there'll be, as the software obviously evolves and develops, obviously more journeys. Then we continue to grow that. Then they've gone from versions 12.3 to 12.4, and they'll move forwards. So that will grow. But to get the initial critical mass covering 17 modules and 1,000 journeys, it was under 3 months to create that.
As well, just to kind of touch on again around the sort of lift and shift aspect to this, even with like really dynamic applications like Salesforce, and we've seen this where people have pushed the tests across different versions as they've up things, is if you build the test in the right way with the hints rather than selectors, and this can get quite complex as well. So you can actually dig into the DOM of the page, and it doesn't just have to be as a hint, doesn't have to be just the visual text you have on there. You can actually start to use things like class names and underlying hints that are very common across all versions of software. So even where you have significant screen layouts and things and different hint text on the page, if you build the hints in the right way using look for steps to anchor it and then use things like the underlying class names, you can build some really, really robust tests with this. And one of the ones that I had just recently showed kind of like how robust this can be. There's a Salesforce website that a customer was using, and basically every time they would break the test because of the way they'd actually written it, just using label text. So we looked at it and we discovered under the obviously the DOM of the page, there was some very robust, stable selectors in there in the way of class names. So what we did was use a combination of look for steps. So we identified the element text on the page, but then for the input form that had got a very dynamic IDs and things to it, we used the class name. So those two things are Virtuoso understand the context of that meant that we could identify some label text to anchor it to a point and then interact with using the class name. So regardless of the changes that then got pushed, this became really stable. And it's the same kind of approach as you push this across different versions. If you build the tests in the right way, they become really solid, regardless of the sort of underlying changes and things that happen to the UI on the page. Vinny, I see your hand up, mate.
Yep. There are two questions, David. One is regarding the test data. Is the data created on the fly at the time of execution or based on some data schema and attributes? That's the first question.
So it depends on how you want to configure this. There's different ways of doing it. So in the coins instance, what this is doing is calling coins endpoints to get data from the connected database. So this runs a series of things. So it'll either get some static data from instance, or it's using like the equivalent of like SQL queries. So they've got a querying language that they use within it that can go and query their endpoints and find data within the database that's connected to match the test. So for instance, if you're closing out a financial year, you need a period that's open. So it'll go and find a period that's open, bring it back, and then close it out. So there's one aspect to it that you could do it that way. So just connect to any endpoint where your data resides. Or it may be that you just load in data tables, some sort of fairly structured data. And again, depending on the environment, it may be that you load in your test data that's fairly static within the test, but you have scripts that rerun overnight to refresh your data within your environment. So you have basically dumb tests, but a better data setup where something resets the data to a known state every night. So there's varying ways of being able to manage that.
Thanks, David. And there's one more question from Satish. Do we have any options or features to synthetically create test data at scale?
So there's varying ways to do that. I mean, typically you would look to have some scripts that run either kind of like inline. So we have some stuff that creates random data. So you could manage an element of test data within some scripting like that. So with the extensions, but also we do have within Virtuoso, there are elements within test data where you can actually generate AI data. So you can describe some level of data that you want, and then it will populate that out for you. But there are obviously other tools as well that you could link directly into via the API. So it does depend on the individual use cases and kind of the scale of that data that you need and how it needs to be managed.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, David. Maybe there's one more question which has just come in. In terms of the different use cases, what is the level of savings from a time perspective for us to move from the composable packs like for Dynamics 365 to a client implementation? What would be the time it would take for a medium-sized project?
Well, as Andy said, the level of those tests that we did with the access group, so they built out journeys in approximately 3 months. So you've got like full end-to-end flows to a large ERP system there within a very short timescale. So the only kind of then move on from that is when you deploy them into a customer instance, it depends on the level of configuration. So, I mean, that was like a full test. So if you're just building sort of reusable functionality that are not full end-to-end flows, then obviously that build of the initial assets will be quick, but then you'll have a bit more time on site as you do the configuration side of it. So I guess some of it is going to come down to what you're trying to deliver. But to give you an idea of the scale, I'd say 1,000 journeys in 3 months is pretty solid going.
Yeah, and we're talking about end-to-end journeys, not just like transactional
Yeah.
tests. So these, I mean, in the normal parlance, it might be even tens of 20 test cases combined into an end-to-end scenario.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, you had a point to make.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Billy. I suppose just to point to the stark difference here that so we work with some customers and also software vendors here that do have significant teams of developers and QA personnel that run into the hundreds. Access Group have over 2,000 in their ERP division of engineers. But simply with some of the traditional solutions for automated testing they will work with, it just wouldn't be possible to create an end-to-end regression suite for something like coins, given the level of change and just the size of it and the dependencies. So you'll end up with pockets of automation. But I think from a partner perspective, if you're being appointed to sort of implement a system or support, some integration around a common platform, it's very difficult in the timeframes you have to then automate this level of testing. And even if you do, to do that effort once and to script it specifically for that deployment for that particular customer is a huge undertaking, versus what we're trying to show here is that pre-building natural language decoupled from anything that sort of ties you to versions or environments, and the data sits outside, and to have that lift and shift asset means that even if you're going into a customer or an environment where you've got the top 50 end-to-end process flows or journeys automated, you've got a real advantage because you've got a great starting point. With coins, we've got everything automated, but there's different, I guess, levels of sort of coverage and completeness with this. It can be the most high value, most used, critical end-to-end flows, or it can be just for a specific module, a use case, or it can be the entire application. But it's just a different approach that I think has real value, particularly if you've got customers, multiple customers on the same instances.
Thanks, Andy. There's also a question on what are the typical scenarios. I think we have mentioned that, but it would be good to understand what would be the ideal candidates that we have seen for the composable plates, not just the standard Dynamics 365 and Salesforce, but there's anywhere where there's a build once and deploy multiple times. Those could be a good scenario. So maybe David and Andy, if you want to expand on that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think I know on one slide there I included logos of the Oracles and S/4HANA, and then line of business systems, so policy and claims systems like Guidewire, the more generic things like obviously Dynamics. It's what you said, Vinay. It's those common platforms, and I'll let David answer this as well, because from a technical perspective, he looks at characteristics a bit differently, but it's where firstly, there's a market opportunity. If you're involved in lots of Salesforce implementations, you can create composable assets there that really serve you well and accelerate things and mean that you can just deliver much faster with leaner teams in a more scaled way. Similarly with Dynamics, some of them mean that you'll probably focus on modules in those bits of software. Dynamics is huge, so maybe we do a lot around the F&O module, but you might pick up other things. But what's your thoughts, David?
Yeah, it's pretty much wherever there's a volume of commonality that gets reused. So whether it be an end-to-end flow that's got the same path across many instances, or whether it's just repeat functionality that there's just a lot of. So like it might be a module within something like Salesforce or Dynamics, whatever it may be, but it's where you've got that repeatability. So let's say it's just a case of you can build it, and even if it's not a full end-to-end flow, you've got the building blocks that you need to get sort of 70-80% of a test built, but you're not having to keep rewriting those, and they are lift and shift. And it, like I say, it can either be kind of a flow level, or maybe there's underlying commonality in the like the DOM structure that you can then leverage. So we see it a lot with like class names tend to be very stable across instances. So it wouldn't matter which instance you're running on, there's some commonality there. And it just means that, again, when you build those assets, they really are lift and shift and really reliable. So you're not spending a lot of time reconfiguring and rebuilding them.
Yeah. Well, I would say anywhere where you are having multiple customer installations with the level of customizations, right? You've got standard flows and then you customize, those would be ideal candidates, because the whole idea that you have composable assets, the library checkpoints, and the whole self-healing aspect, that just makes it so easy for you to build a new set of tests pretty quickly, or just leverage existing tests and do the customization specific for each customer. So that's great. All right, I think that's pretty much it from the question side. Team, happy to answer any more questions. We've got a few more minutes left. If there are any last questions, please feel free to post them on the Q&A, and we will be happy to answer that. If not, I just wanted to let you know all the really exciting set of topics that we're bringing in for the next month of 101, Virtuoso 101. We're really excited about the topic specifically in February, which Andy is going to co-host along with our CTO and co-founder and CTO, Hugo. It's about agentic AI, which is a very hot topic, and we know that it's something that we have made great strides in. So Andy, you just want to give a bit of preview before we close the call meeting for this month?
Let me remember. So it's this is a little bit more obviously forward focused, in terms of striving to you know, the original mission here and the mission today about autonomous testing, you know, we just believe that with some of the newer technologies and approaches, it's we want to go from really assisting teams in building sort of you know, dynamic self-healing automation at fantastic speeds to start to really deepen the intelligence and to look at those processes across the software testing lifecycle and to automate as many of those as we possibly can. And there's so many interesting use cases, whether, you know, from test creation to orchestration to, you know, a lot of that intelligence, extending it in terms of triage and root cause analysis and so on. So in February, we plan to take you through the journey we're on, where we're investing, where we see the opportunities, and where we're taking Virtuoso from an agentic perspective, and what we'll be bringing to market. And I just want to say this one, Vinay. So on with Composable, and some of those things will cross over and touch Composable too, for sure. But the offers really that I'd like to make is that for teams now working on some of these common platforms, enterprise business systems, if you would like to discuss if Composable is a good fit for you, or look a little bit deeper at this because you think it may be consideration, maybe an opportunity, then please get in touch. You'll have the details and we'd love to talk you through that. And if you want to see just examples, a few more examples, or talk about some of your use cases specifically, then we'd be more than happy to do so.
Great. All right. I don't see any more questions. So team, thanks a lot for joining this webinar for January month, Virtuoso 101. We are really excited about next month and the coming topics as well. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any topics that you want to talk about for us to talk about, and any other specific topics which you want us to do a presentation on. We'll be happy to consider that and make sure that we include that in the recommendations that we take in for Virtuoso 101. Thank you so much, David and Andy, and we'll look forward to the next session. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks all.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.